Welcome, everybody, to this edition of Beers with Bill. It is my pleasure to welcome back Peter Collins, the head brewer at TWB. Peter, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Bill.
I'm so happy to have you back again.
I'm not sure whether it's, I didn't check your the YouTube channel to see who else has been called back a second time, but I'm flattered nonetheless. Either that or it's everybody gets called back 2 or 3 times and you got to the bottom of the list.
No, I didn't get to the bottom of the list. I was going through, who do I want back on the show? It's literally
Nice.
how it works.
Thank you.
And it's okay. It's been over 6 months. Peter should be back on the show.
Nice. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Because when I was here last, it was for the May the 4th.
May the 4th. That's right. We had a great time.
Yeah.
So which beer are you going to start with tonight?
That's a good question. Let's start with American Brown.
American Brown. Okay.
Yeah. That's the great sound right there, eh?
Yes, it is.
And I have my fancy 5th anniversary beer glass from TWB. Fancy stem glass with the 5th anniversary logo on it.
Yeah.
For this evening. And we do actually have, so this is at TWB, this is our 5th anniversary year. So February 10th, 2016 was when we started. So this has been our 5th year. So instead of just doing one thing in February, we decided that we would do 5 beers for 5 years. So we've released 5 beers over the course of this year, and we have the last one that's just out in the last week or 2, I think. So that'll be at the end of the show. It's the double wobbly wheel that we did. But this one right here it's our American Brown. And I always refer to it as sort of, it's a sleeper hit for me, because an American brown ale is not necessarily a go-to for me, or any brown ale for that matter. I don't dislike them. It's just like in my sort of day-to-day consumption, I like a nice pale ale or a pilsner or something like that. But then every time I brew this one and I try it, I'm always sort of surprised, like, wow, this is really good. It's a classic American brown ale. There's nothing sort of super fancy about it. It's to style, as they say. So it's got some nice American hops in there, and it's got really good body. The thing that always surprises me, and the thing that I always like about it, is that there's this, I was going to say odd. It's not odd. It's really good. There's this creaminess about it that I really enjoy. I don't know if is anybody else drinking it with me, or am I on my own with the American Brown?
I think you're on your own. Like I said, I didn't get a chance to make it up to KW.
That's totally fine.
To get beer.
I don't mind. It's still delicious.
But I know I've had your American Brown in the past, and it's a style of beer that I really like. So it's one of the best ones.
Thank you. The other thing I was recalling, I can't remember who I was talking to, but it was on a Zoom call like this. I was recalling, and you would share this with me, I'm sure, Bill, and this is no comment on anything, Pete's Wicked Brown Ale.
Yes.
Yeah, from way back when, in the early craft beer renaissance, late 80s, 90s.
Yeah, I'm going to say really dating ourselves on that one.
I know it. Sorry. But that was one of those things that was like, again, it was, in that craft beer renaissance, like, ooh, it's a dark beer and it's really interesting. Oh, it's an American brown ale, and we didn't really know what that was about. And so there it was. I remember it being in the LCBO and picking it up whenever I could find it and enjoying it.
Yeah, Terry Emmer saying, Pete's Wicked is just made great beer, period.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I can't remember what else was coming into the LCBO from Pete's Wicked, but definitely the brown ale. I think that was their sort of flagship thing.
That was their flagship. That put them on the map to start with, because it was so different from everybody else.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So just so people understand, what's the difference between an American brown ale and what I would call a European red ale?
Oh,
Really putting you on the spot on that one.
You threw a little curveball at me. I was expecting the American brown ale and an English brown ale. A European red ale.
Well, that's the closest you're gonna get to like a brown ale. Is not an Irish red, but more a there it is, Flanders red style.
Oh, well, the difference between those two, yeah, that's very, very different. Flanders red is a sour, yeah. And Belgian style, yeah, sour, very bitter. The American brown ale is not that. Good American hop flavor and aroma, and just a good malt body with the brown ale portion of it. You started that question, and I was already prepared to talk about American brown versus English brown, which somebody has brought up.
Someone just asked, so go for it.
Derek, is that right? Yeah. So it's mostly the difference in the hops. So the Americans took that English brown ale style and just did what a lot of Americans do, which is just like sort of amp it up. And I guess I am literally guessing that that would you brew with what you have. So if you're trying to brew a brown ale and you don't have English hops and you live in America and you've got American hops, that's what you're going to use. So all those home brewers early on in sort of the 80s, all that would have had American hops readily available, so they would have done what they could, and a brown ale with American hops was what they ended up with instead of the sort of English hops. Similar hops to American versus English IPA. Yes, yeah, sure. I'll say yeah. And just less so, of course. Like your American brown is not going to be as hopped as an American IPA. But yes, they would have been using similar hops. Again, it would have to do with brewing with what you've got. C hops versus Fuggles, yes, exactly, yeah, or EKG or anything like that for the English side of things. But yeah, if you're in England and you don't have everything available, you're going to use English hops, and same in America. So that's sort of what was going on.
So I do have to ask, since COVID's been affecting everybody, how about your professional music? Have you been back playing? Is there anything you can share with us on that?
Well, you picked a good week to have me on, Bill.
Yeah.
It's just sort of restarting now. Friday, Saturday, I'm back with Hamilton Phil, a sort of regular Christmas pop show, which is great. And this is one of those things, when you don't know what you've got till it's gone. And this is a regular old Christmas pop show, and I'm super thrilled to be playing it again. Most everybody, when everything was sort of very, very active pre-pandemic, most musicians be like, oh, we got another Christmas pops. I've got like 3 of them this year to do, and all that. And you've got Sleigh Ride and Christmas Festival and some sort of carol sing along and all that. And most musicians sort of rolled their eyes, but now I'm pretty sure everybody's thrilled just to be back on stage with a full orchestra. And I'm not sure what size of audience or what capacity we're going to have, but most everybody's going to be thrilled to be playing Sleigh Ride again, I think. I've also got a little brass quartet that I formed a while ago, Brewer's Brass. And we're actually playing Friday evening at Forefathers in Cambridge. And again, it's sort of another Christmas themed show. We have our own stuff that we do, but we're all professional musicians. It's 2 trumpets, 2 trombones. One of the trumpet players is a busy freelancer in Toronto. The other is a very competent trumpet player who is also one of the associate deans at the Faculty of Music at Laurier. The other trombone player is the principal trombonist at the Kitchener-Waterloo Symphony, and me, I'm the bass trombonist with Hamilton Phil, and I play in London as well. So we're all decent players, but we all have that classical sort of background. So in addition to the Christmas stuff, we do have our own sort of classical bent to the evening, and hopefully that will not send too many people away, but keep them coming in and drinking beer. I always hope that it draws in sort of a different audience than your sort of standard cover band or whichever, and and hopefully that's good for Forefathers. We did do a couple of gigs at Counterpoint earlier this year as well, one in August and one in October. So that's been fun. That's been really great, just to be able to get together with those guys again and play. It's so much fun, and we're all very, very good friends. And then to be able to get out and play and have a couple of beers while you're doing it is fun too.
And I missed it. I should have asked you if you would play next Tuesday night at my Christmas show at Counterpoint.
You have a Christmas show at Counterpoint?
Yeah, that's next week.
Sure.
You want to come and play?
As a quartet?
I'd love it.
I'll talk to them. I'm just trying to think what's next. Is the 22nd?
21st.
Tuesday? 21st.
Tuesday the 21st.
Okay. None of us are terribly busy right now.
Hey, well, you know, like you said, we're just starting to get back, and no one knows what Omicron's going to do.
No, I know.
It's just so much uncertainty right now. That's for sure.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
I got another fun gig.
Go ahead.
Another fun one coming up in January is it's one that was canceled right at the beginning of the pandemic in March of 2020, but it's Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, and the full big orchestra playing the complete soundtrack with the movie. It's in London at the Budweiser Center, and those ones are a blast. I've only done a couple of those, but they're so much fun because it's the actual soundtrack. It's not selections from or a medley of or anything. It's like full on.
That's great.
Yeah.
So what was it like going back into rehearsal for the first time?
Well, with the quartet, it was really fun because I mean everybody was super excited. It was at my house, just downstairs in the basement, and we hadn't played together as that group in almost 2 years. It was just great. It was a little bit, I mean, from my standpoint, a little bit nerve-wracking. It's like you play on your own for so long, and then it's like, oh, now I have to play with people, and I have to tune and be together, and it's like, I hope I can do it still, you know. But it was fine. I'm really super excited for Friday for the first rehearsal with the Hamilton Phil, getting back with the full orchestra and full low brass section and all of that. It's going to be amazing.
I imagine it will be.
Yeah,
it will be. It's been almost 2 years now, eh?
Yeah, it has. Yeah, the last thing I played with Hamilton was February of 2020.
Yeah,
and that was Scheherazade.
Yeah,
and then everything shut down.
So on the quartet, Derek's curious if all four of you are brewers.
Oh, no, it's Brewers Brass. The apostrophe is before the S in Brewers because I'm the only brewer. But that's an excellent question. Put the apostrophe after the S. No, it's my, I'm the brewer. They're my brass.
Yeah. So which beer are we going to go to next?
Wait, I have to clear this one out. We're moving along at a very good clip now. Coconut Stout is next.
Coconut Stout. Okay.
So this one is, so the base beer is a dry stout. It's like a typical dry stout that you would have. And then I add in, like a dry hop edition, I add in about 20 pounds of coconut into a full tank, a little bit more than 20, maybe 25 pounds. And the coconut is, sorry, this is all technical process stuff, but it's
that's right.
It's the really fine diced coconut. I don't know what you call it. I buy our supplier for malt and some other brewing supplies as trainers. They also supply bakeries. So this coconut that they have, bakeries use it for macaroons. So I used that in this and put it straight in, and again treated it like a dry hop edition. So it sat for a few days and then transferred out and luckily there wasn't too much coconut in the carryover, which is always a plus. There's a I think there's a story coming later. I have a cheat sheet because the questions that you sent me, Bill. Yeah, there's a story coming later about things not settling out, which you may have heard the story before, but coconut does actually settle out reasonably well. So there's no carryover into the end product, which is nice. Because there's a few things, like in our brewery, there's a couple of very fine, like we have 1.5-inch openings for a lot of our fittings, but then they choke down to where there's a quick disconnect for a line connection, and so they choke down to very, very small. So if there's a piece of coconut or even hops debris that gets stuck in there, it clogs the line, and it's terrible. And the other thing is the worry of mobile canning. When they come in, we have Northern Canning that comes in, and of course the fill heads on those are quite fine as well, and if anything gets clogged in there, then you're down for a little bit while they clear that. But luckily no coconut was no coconut was harmed in the making of this beer. No, there was no coconut carryover, but it's good. To me, it works really well. I know not everybody likes coconut. It's just one of those products that not everybody likes, but generally those who do like it really like it. I tend to be a coconut fan, and this one works for me. It's not one of the risks of using too much coconut can be sort of that suntan oil flavor. And to me, it's not there. It's just a nice coconut in with the dry stout, and there's the nice sort of roasty notes coming from the stout anyway. So it's seems to be okay, I think.
Well, that's good. Coconut is one of my favorite background flavors.
Oh, nice. Good.
So look forward to getting a chance to stop in and pick some up. What's the last 6 months been like at TWB?
Generally good, I would say. We had some for me personally, it's been steady, but the one thing that we have had is we've got stalls at both the Kitchener Market and the St. Jacobs Market. So that's been nice as an extra retail outlet for us. So we can sell cans and bottles there, and merchandise as well. So it's been good. The St. Jacobs Market during the summer, during sort of the high season, was Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and then the Kitchener Market was Saturdays only. But that's been great. I think we've moved a fair bit of product through there. I think it's been reasonably successful. It feels sometimes at my end, at the production end, that it is sort of not slow and steady, but just steady. I fell into a rhythm for quite a while of about 1 full tank a week of brewing and processing. And that seems to have carried on. We've taken a few dips through there, and good dips in the sense that like product has been moving well. And I guess by dips, I mean dips in volume.
Yeah,
it's what I see at my end. Dips in volume, but increase in sales. So that's been good. We've had our sort of fall Oktoberfest, Crafttoberfest that we do, and sort of one more iteration of that, because we've tried to change it over the last few years, just to get, make it more interesting and more of a festival. Of course, the last 2 years have been a struggle, but I think we did well this year. And again, also trying to make it sort of a little bit leaner and meaner and sort of more efficient, and spend less and make a little bit more, so it's not a total loss for us to do it. And I think we managed to do that this year, so that was fun. And then lately, just the sort of the ramp up to Christmas time Christmas beers, the barrel beers, that sort of thing. Our Crafttoberfest is the first weekend in October. So then once we finish that, it's quite a ramp up to that. It's a very busy weekend, and then sort of everybody kind of crashes after that, except for me, because I still have to carry on with regular production. But then sort of events and activities at the brewery are a little bit of a lull through October, November, but then we ramp up again through December for hitting sales and the special beer releases and whatnot. So we got a couple of barrel beers into bottles before the end of November. And then just on December 5th, so I guess about a week and a half ago, we had a Krampus night festival. So I brewed a special Krampus beer that was a Kvike Black IPA. And for those who, there's a rather extended, elaborate myth or legend about Krampus, how he, beats kids with sticks who have been bad for Christmas and leaves them chunks of coal, and it's a terrible it's a terrible thing. But anyways, I used actual sticks and branches in the mash. I used some juniper branches in there that still had juniper berries on them, so that you got the feeling that there were sticks in this Krampus beer. And we did a counterpart to the Krampus beer, which is a St. Nicholas beer. So there was the Krampus, the evil one, and St. Nicholas, the sort of the good one. And that was a candy cane infused Russian Imperial Stout that we did for that one. So that was just a little while ago. So yeah, that's been about the last 6 months at TWB. So it's been okay. We're still going,
I'm curious, candy cane in a Russian Imperial Stout.
Mm-hmm.
How'd that turn out?
Yeah, it worked well.
Yeah,
we have it's a very, very serious and scientific process of dosing and testing the beers before we release them. That sounds very, very involved. It's slightly involved. We make a tincture with the candy cane, and then we figure out a dosing rate on a small level just by taking samples and at the sort of milliliter level, and then scale that up to the 50 liters or 100 liters or whichever we're doing. And it's just interesting because we usually do it with 4 or 5 of us at the brewery, and of course we all have a different taste and a different idea of what we want. We always come to a reasonable consensus though. And it's just interesting because some people like it, those dosing rates subtle. Some people like them, punch you in the face, and we usually land somewhere in the middle. So it works, it's that sort of candy cane infused thing. It's not everybody's cup of tea. I totally get that, but you can't be all things to all people. But people liked it, so it was good.
Yeah, I'm just picturing, okay, so how many candy canes did you crush and throw into the mash? And
150. They were the little candy canes.
Yeah.
And they're all individually wrapped, not in a loose wrapping. They're all tightly wrapped.
Oh yeah, no.
Yeah.
Gonna unwrap them.
Yeah. Yeah. It was okay. I had help, and it was, with a little tedious job like that, when you've got help, you're just standing around talking and doing this thing, and it was fine. Nobody got hurt. Am I confident I got all the plastic? Yes, I am confident. I did check. Thank you for asking, though. Good question.
Plastic wouldn't make it through the system, Derek. Come on. I'm more interested in, you counted out 150 to start with, but how many actually made it into the tank?
150. It was dosed after the stout was done.
No, I'm just picturing, open one up, stick the candy cane in your mouth, go to the next one, and hey, just a minute. There's supposed to be 150. Which one of you guys had one of those candy canes?
I don't mind candy canes, but I don't think I like them that much.
Oh yeah. So that would be an interesting Russian Imperial Stout. The peppermint tone coming out pretty quickly, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it's subtle. It was very background and sort of
Yeah.
closer to the finish of
Yeah.
the beer for the sip. So, and again, this is a thing for me that I have a couple of points of view that those things like fruit in a beer, I love, and I like it to be like, I really want to know that the fruit is there, and I want you to know that the fruit is there. Whatever I'm using, it's like fruit.
Yeah.
Bam, right there. But other stuff like spice and in this case candy canes, but we've also done like chili pepper beers, things like that. I want that to be much more background, because I really want you to have, or want to have another, not to have one and go like, wow, I'm like really done with candy canes right now, and that was a little too much. Or the spice beer, like I'm just like on fire and I can't do it anymore. I want it to be there so that like you know that it's there, but not so much that you don't want another one.
Yep.
So that's tricky to find that balance, especially amongst the people who are testing for dosing rates and all that. Because some of us, with the spicy beer, for example, some of us really love the spice. And for me, it was like, yeah, I love spicy food, but I don't love spicy beer. I want to know that it's there, but it just in the background a little bit.
I hear you. When we were down in the States with Terry and Emma, I am not a cider fan, and these guys had a mango jalapeno cider. And that was quite the mind-blowing combination. They had it, they got it right.
And it was good.
It was really good. Like I said, I'm by no means a cider fan. I really, I can talk about ciders, I know how to make them, but it's just not, it's not my thing.
Yeah.
And I tried it and it was like, wow, this is just over the top.
Mm-hmm.
They got they got the flavors balanced perfectly.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Isn't that fun?
Yeah.
You find something like that?
Yeah. Which brings me to my Terry question. What beer have you tried? And it doesn't matter if the last year or the last 20 years. What beer have you ever tried that you went, oh my gosh, I wish I'd made that?
Yeah. That's funny because I saw that question. And that just happened like 2 weeks ago, I think. We were visiting friends up in McGregor Point, up near Port Elgin and Southampton. And the Saturday after, we were there for the weekend, and Saturday afternoon we went into both Port Elgin and Southampton. And we stopped for a drink at it's Wismer Pub, I think it's, or Wismer Restaurant, but it's also attached to Three Sheets Brewing in Port Elgin. And they had a Pilsner that was on tap from the Three Sheets that just totally blew my mind. I'd never heard of Three Sheets, so that was a fun experience to go there and just try this Pilsner. And it's like, this is really amazing. It was really very, very good. Everything about it. And it was like, I would say maybe sort of more of a Czech Pilsner. It was like a softer feel to it. Really very nice. And then the other one, it wasn't a specific beer, but it was another new brewery that I went to a few weeks ago in Toronto, Northern Maverick, right downtown Toronto. And it was one of these places that I was like, not reluctant to go. I was happy to go. It was a very big brew pub. They're on Bathurst, I think, between King and Queen. Between King and Queen. So it costs a chunk of money just to be there.
Yeah.
And so I went in with my bar being very, very low for what to expect from the beers. The menu looked good, and then we got our beers, and I was like, I had a Vienna lager to start, and my wife had an IPA, and the Vienna lager was just like, it was really good. It was just right. It was like, it was to style. It tasted really good. Everything about it was just right. And it's like when you go into a new place like that and you're not sure, it's really nice to find that, that they hit it right. And the IPA was good. I didn't have a whole glass of IPA, but I had a little sip of what my wife had ordered, and the aroma was fantastic. It was a pretty sort of typical hazy IPA, but really, really well done.
Praise for a Pilsner or a Vienna lager from another brewer is always that's it, you know.
Yeah,
Those are the hardest ones to nail.
I totally agree. Yeah. I'm brewing our Pilsner next week for release in January. And it's one that I like. I think we do a good job of that Pilsner. It's just slightly different than what I had from Three Sheets. But yeah, Three Sheets, I was like, oh, I wish I could make a Pilsner like this. It was really good.
Oh, that's great. Cam had a question. I missed it. I need to go back to it. Wondering if candy canes are fermentable, like regular sucrose. And so if you put them into a beer, do they continue to ferment?
I would say yes, they can. I put them in the end product as a tincture, so they're not going to ferment. But yes, if I put them in to fermentation, or the fermenter as sort of a dry hop addition, or even added them to the boil, the sugar would have dissolved and would have added to the gravity of the beer and would have also fermented it.
Okay. Which beer are we going to talk about next?
Gosh, one moment. This is our New England IPA. It's the Mousse à la Mou.
Yeah.
This is one of my favorites when it comes on. It's on right now. It's just we're at the end of it for draft sales, but we still have some cans left. It's, I guess, a typical New England IPA. I would love to go to New England and try a bunch of New England IPAs at the source. But I'm proud of this one. It's, I think, delicious. It has, I used peach puree for the peach part of it. And the apricot part of it, oddly enough, early on when I was brewing this, and I'd done another peach beer a number of years ago, the advice that was given to me was, if you're going to use peach, also use apricot, or even use apricot in place of peach, because peach can get lost. The apricot won't, but the apricot can also sort of amplify the peach. So that's what I tried to do initially. The first few iterations of this one were peach only, but then I introduced apricot. The problem was that I couldn't actually find, I used peach puree, but I couldn't find apricot puree. No, I'm sorry. I used peach puree once. I'll get back to that story. I now use just, they're called IQF, or individual quick frozen peaches. And I make a puree from that and dose it into the tank. But I also add in like just 2 or 3 apricots so that there's actually apricot in there. It's not chock full of apricot. It's not like peach and apricot in equal balance. There is apricot in there. So yeah, the peaches are in there. And then the hops, I'm using Amarillo, Centennial, and one other that I will find out for you. The peach puree story is, I probably told this last time I was on because it was sort of fairly fresh, but I used peach puree once early last year. And what happened was the puree acted as a fining agent in the beer. So it was super easy to use and created a really, really nice product right out of the fermenter and right out of the bright and out of the serving tank. But then in the first couple of weeks, what happened was that peach puree pulled all the solids out of the beer. And so in the bottle, what you had was like not just a layer of sediment at the bottom, but like a layer of sediment at the bottom. And it was like chunky and weird.
Yeah.
And then eventually what was happening was in the serving tank and in kegs, the beer was clarifying. So if you'd pour from the keg, you'd get some sludge coming out for the first little bit, and then you get a nice clear New England IPA coming out after that. It wasn't a bad beer. It still tasted great, but it was really not at all what it should have been. I was so, I
Yeah,
guess,
it would have
angry
been a
would have been
bit of
the
a shock.
I was so because it was one of these things like it had all been processed and finished and it was done, and then everything clarified after the fact. I did not like that. So I am not using that peach puree product anymore. I'm sure it's a great product. It's just not the product for this beer. So I went back to the individually quick frozen peaches on this one, and it works.
I can't remember which beer it was we got from Stout City, but I actually had to shake the keg every night when I came in, because if I didn't, it dropped.
Yeah.
So I hear you, because that would be a very frustrating thing to have happen.
Oh yeah.
So I gotta get my list up, Peter. I've lost myself where I am when I have my questions
That's
for
okay.
you.
Oh, Terry and Emma mentioned Northern Maverick.
Yeah.
We went with my two daughters, and my wife and I. My two daughters are vegetarian, and there were lots of good veggie options on the menu, so that was good. And just the menu in general, it was a Saturday brunch menu. It was quite good. I liked it, and the beer was top notch. There's nothing wrong with it. So enjoy when you're there next time.
So because I see all the books behind you, I'm going to ask the next easy one. That is, what book would I find on your nightstand right now?
And that's an easy answer. Nothing. I'm not a huge reader. That's all my wife's books.
Okay.
But no, when I do get back to reading, a really solid sort of default for me is pretty much anything by Bill Bryson. I find it a relatively easy read, and he's hilarious. I like his stuff. But also from a technical standpoint, I can't remember the organization, but they put out 4 books for brewers, malt, water, hops, and yeast.
Yeah.
And it's a very, very good series, really well written, very informative, very good. And I'm also a huge fan of cooking and kitchen things. So, Anthony Bourdain is always a good read. Cookbooks, baking books, stuff like that are always good to look through for ideas and whatnot.
What's your favorite dish to make in the kitchen?
I don't know. I wasn't ready for that question, Bill.
Of course not. They throw a curveball.
Yeah, I know. I did just make some sausage with a friend a couple of weeks ago, and he always does Polish sausage, and I tried andouille sausage with him, and then I smoked part of what I had. And then that same night, then I made a jambalaya with the andouille and some shrimp and chicken, and it was really good. I like that. I love chicken stew and dumplings, but my wife makes that, and I don't tread on her territory for that one. But I do love eating it. I like meat. It's like a nice roast chicken. I've been playing with sous vide for the last couple of years. That's fun.
Yeah.
And the smoked meat. I love doing a brisket. That's been fun.
So I take it you got a smoker in the backyard?
I do. Yeah. I got one right at the beginning of the pandemic on Kijiji. A big upgrade for me, because I'd always had like $50 barbecues for forever that just the bottom rusts out of them after a few years and they end up at the curbside. So I ended up with a Vision grill, like a Kamado smoker. This is a very nice red one that I really, really enjoy.
That's
it's
fantastic.
Been great. It's because it grills and can smoke really well too. So that's been a wonderful addition to the back deck.
So again, on the personal note, now that you're back sort of professionally playing again, what would I find on your playlist right now?
That answer I'm ready for. Tonight at the brewery, I was playing Christmas brass playlist. As cheesy as that may sound, it's Christmas, so you play Christmas tunes. But that particular playlist is the arrangements are really good, and the brass playing is really good too. It's a bunch of different brass ensembles, but every time a tune comes on, I'm like, "Oh, that's really good." They sound really nice. So Christmas brass, but I've also because I've got the thing in London coming up for Prisoner of Azkaban, I've got the soundtrack on there as well. And a little bit more jazz. Wayne Bergeron, if anybody knows Wayne Bergeron, is a lead trumpet player in like Hollywood, Los Angeles, top call for everything there. If anybody saw The Incredibles or knows The Incredibles soundtrack, that's Wayne Bergeron, the lead trumpet there. Vic Wooten for jazz. At the other end of the band, Wayne Bergeron's lead trumpet and Vic Wooten is bass, electric bass. So he's fun. I like sometimes putting music on the brewery that I can hear a little bit more over the white noise of pumps and fans and whatnot. So sometimes anything with the especially bass, the Vic Wooten and Marcus Miller and those guys, that's fun to listen to. So try and change it up a little bit. I know last time we were talking, I really geeked out on the early music side of things. That's there and that's always going to be there. But,
what can I say? The last time we brewed together, we had a great time with the background
music. Oh, yeah.
So, and I'm always been partial to Christmas brass. So,
okay.
There's just something about the arrangements and how everything comes together.
That's true. Yeah, I agree.
If you could spend a day brewing with anybody, who would it be?
Yeah, I don't know. This is terrible to say. I looked over that cheat sheet a couple of times, and those questions were at the bottom, and I didn't get there.
You didn't get there. Okay. Well,
I'd scroll. I was like, "Oh, that's a good question. That's a good question." I'll think about that for a little while and write something down. Oh, yeah, okay, that's a good question. I did. That was at the bottom, and I just saw it before like at 7:30 today. I was like, "Who would I brew with? I don't know. Who would I brew with?" It's the same answer I gave back in May. I think any of sort of those early, the sort of the craft beer renaissance brewers, I think. Or like really, really early brewers who had like no thermometers or no gauges of anything, but they were still making beer. I'd be really curious to see what kind of beer they were making too.
It'd be interesting to get back with someone who had been brewing beer all his life with nothing in the way of what we had.
Yeah.
Because they'd have that down to such a science.
Art.
Yeah. Art and science, but
total art, like the rule of thumb thing, and just having no idea what yeast actually is, but knowing that it's only going to make beer if I put this other stuff in it. What a weird concept.
Got any ideas who you think is the most interesting up and coming brewer in the region?
I think it has to be that guy at Three Sheets who made that Pilsner.
Okay.
I don't know his last name because when I was there, I picked up some cans to go, so I was in the retail section. So it's Kyle, and I think he used to be at McLean's, I think.
Okay.
but I didn't find out his last name. But that guy brewing that Pilsner, yeah. I'd like to meet him at some point.
Yep.
Say hello, shake his hand, congratulate him on a really nice Pilsner.
Yep. Before we talk about the last beer, Counterpoint just recently, according to Derek, released the barrel aged version of the Your Black is Beautiful collab.
Yeah.
And apparently they got some more versions coming out. Is TWB doing anything along that line as well?
Yes. Yeah. So the 4 breweries that were involved in that collab, the Block 3, Counterpoint, Shortfinger, and us, we all have our Black is Beautiful available now. So we did do, back in 2020, we did do a collab for the original recipe of Black is Beautiful. And then in the fall last year, we did another collab with the same recipe. The first one was done at Block 3, and then we did one at TWB in my brewery. And we then split that batch 4 ways, and we each barrel aged our version in different barrels. So ours was a rum barrel. So that is out and available now. I'm not exactly sure what the other barrels were that the other breweries used. I have a feeling that there was a tequila barrel in there somewhere. I think that might have been Shortfinger. Counterpoint also used a rum barrel, but they added things to the barrel, spices and flavors or something. I'm not exactly sure what. And I'm not sure what barrel Block 3 used, but ours is out and available, and it is black and beautiful. It's a big imperial stout, and it really has so much complexity and so much going on in it. It's really very good.
So let's talk about the last beer.
Okay. So the last beer is the double Wobbly wheel. Double Wobbly wheel.
Yep.
And so this is our 5th beer of our 5 beers for 5 years. So Wobbly Wheel is our flagship beer. It's an IPA. Lots and lots of hop flavor and aroma. Not a lot of upfront bitterness to it. It's got a nice red color to it. And so it's very, very popular, and it's one of the beers I basically have to have on all the time. And it sells very well, and people really love it, and I think that's fantastic. And I figured, sort of as a tribute to that beer and to all the people who really love it, and because it's on all the time, I figured I'd make sort of an amped up version of it as a double IPA. So double Wobbly Wheel IPA. So it's exactly the same as Wobbly, all the same grains and hops, just more of everything. So it's 8.3% ABV. And it's got a little bit of extra dry hopping in there as well for the aroma. So I haven't had very much of this. But yeah, it's great. It smells like a big Wobbly. Yeah.
Smooth and easy.
Yeah,
which
yeah,
is why it's going to be wobbly after you've had the second one and
very,
not
very
realize
wobbly. Yeah, 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 yeah. It's a nice one, actually. Yeah.
What's the beer you're most proud of?
Yeah, you asked me that. Sorry, I've got to go back to my cheat sheet here. What was that's the beer I'm most proud of. I give you a solid I don't know.
Then let's move on from there. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Because it's no point. I mean, you've got to be proud of everything you've accomplished over the years. That's for sure.
Sure. There's very few beers that I brew that I'm like, I'm really proud of that.
Yeah.
There's some that come up. It's not that I don't take pride in my work, but attaching pride to beers is something different, I think.
Yeah.
One of the last beers, not one of the last beers, I brewed a beer a couple times during the summer, our folk summer beer. It's a Kottbusser. It's a retired sort of German ale, but it's a beer that coming out of the Bright, and when I was sampling it there, I was like, wow, that's really good.
Yeah.
And that's more my reaction to beers. It's like the New England IPA. Like that to me is like, oh, I really like that. That's good. But I don't think of that as, I guess I'm proud of that, but I don't, there's not a beer in my career that sticks out as like, I'm really proud of that beer.
No, that's okay. I'm going to ask the question differently to everybody else now. What beer made you go, wow?
Yeah, most recently that folk summer,
Yeah.
for sure. And it was just a weird, confluence of things, right? Like maybe the hot day and a really refreshing, it's only a 4.1% beer, I think. It's a nice low ABV. The ginger in it, all of that. And that's a question that's like, your favorite meal. Your favorite meal isn't necessarily the best food that you ever had. Your favorite meal is quite often the setting, the people that you're with. Yes, sometimes the food, but it's often so many factors involved in what makes that your favorite meal. And it's the same with the beer. A beer that makes me go, wow, could be like, hot day, back deck, I not really had a PBR, but oh, wow, that kind of thing. Most lately the Pilsner from Three Sheets, but I also remember the craft brewers conference that I was at in Nashville. One of the first nights I was there, they had like their opening sort of gala thing, and I tried this beer from a brewery that I'd never heard of, and it was a blonde ale. That's potentially pretty nondescript, but that was my favorite beer of the entire conference, because it was a beer that like I sat down and we were surrounded by all these breweries and brewers and all this stuff going on, and I just tried it and it was like, that's really good. And it was a wow kind of beer, and the friends that I was there with, they agreed that like that was a damn fine beer.
That's a fair answer. People ask me my favorite scotch, and that's tell me what I'm doing, and then I'll tell you which one I'm going to drink.
Yeah,
because the setting's just as important. You're right.
Yeah.
So we'll go to the easier one. Your funniest beer story.
Yeah, got a couple of those. That one is easier. So a shorter story is, I remember, so when I was at Grand River Brewing and I was the head brewer there, so January 2015 to July 2016. And early on there, I think it was probably the February or March or so, we used to do those beer nights there, and we'd bring in other breweries and just talk about the beer, and there'd be snacks and whatnot. And we had a cask night there, and I did a cask at Grand River, and so other breweries came in with casks, and I just had the damnedest time tapping my cask, and it was just there was literally a shower of beer that went from that cask up to the ceiling, and the tap would not seat properly in the keystone. All kinds of problems, like beer everywhere and all over me. And luckily, I can't remember which brewery was there, but one of the other brewers came in. He's like, here's use my tap. And so I had to reseat everything, but that meant like taking the tap out of the keystone, beer going up to the ceiling, and then retapping the tap into the keystone. It was terrible. And it's like, oh yeah, I'm the head brewer. Look at me. covered in beer and hops. It was terrible, laughable in retrospect, and laughable immediately after as well, thankfully. But the other weird, it's a weird and funny story. A bunch of years ago, I think it was 2013. I was on tour with a brass ensemble. Stay with me. I was on tour with a brass ensemble in China, and we were playing this concert. And at the intermission, somebody came up to the director and said, "I'm running a beer festival in a town nearby, and we'd love for your brass ensemble to come and play at the beer festival for beer." So in my mind, I'm thinking beer festival, that sounds amazing. Like in China and get to try some Chinese beer at a beer festival, because I'm speaking to you guys, we all have an idea of what a beer festival is for us because we've been to them. So the director asked us at intermission, he's like, "Do we want to go and do this beer festival?" And we're like, "Yeah, that sounds amazing," because we're all brass players. To perpetuate a stereotype. So then we finished the concert, and it was like a regular concert time to be done, like 10 or 10:30. And so we get on the bus to head to this town for this beer festival. Oh, okay, so the drive, overall, the drive was, I think, was probably about an hour and a half or 2 hours to get to this beer festival. So that's putting us close to midnight before we even get there. But on the drive there, I mean, China is very, and the cities are very urban. That's obvious. But we got out of the city and we're in like industrial nowhere land. And I swear to God, like after 45 minutes to an hour of just driving through all this, I thought the bus was just going to pull over and we were all going to be dead. And we're just like, organ harvesting or something was going to happen. It was just terrible. And then we finally got to the town, and there's just like neon lights everywhere in this sort of stadium park enclosure kind of thing for this beer festival. And so we drove up, and the brass ensemble gets off the bus, and we sort of meet the person who had brought us there, and we're sent right up on stage. And there's this Chinese cultural stuff going on stage that we have no idea what it's about. There's dancing and singing going on, and we're there. And then we start to play, and we're doing things like the chicken dance, and like we're English white people in this Chinese beer festival. It was completely surreal. Really no idea what's going on, but there was no beer. We were definitely told there's no beer until after you play. So we played, and it was probably about 15 or 20 minutes, really not that long, but this weird, like surreal stuff that's happening on stage. And then we come off stage and we're seated in this sort of VIP section for the beer festival. And there's like snacks on the table, but there's snacks of like, I don't know what they are. I don't know if they're bugs or sea creatures or anything. I just have no idea what anything is. So I'm like very politely refusing. And then we're offered the pitchers of beer. It's not really a beer festival. It's just a place where everybody drinks like a whole bunch of beer. But all the beer that's being served, and most of the beer in China is really super low ABV, like 3 or 4%. So we're having these pitchers of beer and enjoying it, and it's hot and it's cold beer and it's very refreshing. And then somebody comes up, like there's like the railings or barriers between the VIP section and the sort of regular section, and a man comes up to the barrier and approaches one of the other members of this brass ensemble and gestures like with a full pitcher of beer, like, "Yeah, let's like beer, like drinking competition. We need to drink this full pitcher of beer." So the other members of the brass ensemble know that I'm a brewer. So I was called over to accept the challenge of this gentleman to drink and chug a pitcher of this beer. So we're sort of talking back and forth about this and like gesturing about what we're going to do and all this. And then he takes off his shirt. So I'm like, okay, I guess that's what we do for a chugging competition in China. So I take off my shirt, and then we proceed to chug this beer from this pitcher. It's like, I don't know what's going on, but for, sort of international relations, I let him win, and that was a good thing. And then we carried on, and like I put my shirt back on, and it was just the most surreal evening slash beer festival. Everybody then left, and then we got on our bus and drove back to the hotel, and it was 2 or 2:30 in the morning when we got back, and it was bizarre, but yeah, a lifelong memory, I guess. The sad part to that story is there's not really a punchline, except that it was just this like many hours of weirdness and this like take your shirt off and have a beer drinking competition. I don't know.
I hear you. Haven't quite been in that kind of a situation, but I can picture that.
Yeah. I don't know if that's the funniest story, but that's the weirdest beer story that I have, probably.
That's perfect. Peter, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us this evening and talk to us about TWB and the beers and share your story with us.
Yeah,
we appreciate it,
Bill.
Yeah. Remind
Thanks.
those of
Thanks,
you,
everybody.
Next week is the Christmas. As long as Omicron is not giving us a difficulty, we will be live at Counterpoint. There are still a few seats left for those of you who haven't messaged me yet. Peter, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Cheers, Bill.
Having
Thanks
you
very
back.
much.